The problem that we've got now is that we actually resist, as a society, we actually resist other people that might have learned something intuitively, that might have learned something by observation, because we want to see their certificate and we want to see their license. And there are plenty of certified people out there that are actually not very good at what they do because the course itself is no good. Do you know there's an actual case of a woman in the United States that got fined thousands of dollars for braiding people's hair, like to hiring staff to get them to braid people's hair because apparently she didn't have a license. It might sound ridiculous to some people it might sound perfectly normal. It sounds ridiculous to me, especially when the courses that are being offered for people to actually braid people's hair don't even teach actual braiding itself. So this lady was having to pay thousands of dollars for each of her staff. This isn't really about licensing per se. I really want to speak about knowledge, but the thing is, there are so many instances in society where you want to be able to do something, but you can't do it because you don't have a license to do it. You don't have a certificate to do it. And I just find that really odd. Like, braiding people's hair, like, what is a big deal about braiding someone's hair? There's hardly any health and safety regulations with that. I know what the real reason is without getting overly conspiratorial about it. The real reason is because you get a lot of capitalist institutions that realize that there is a market developing somewhere and they want to be able to capitalize on that market. But the way that they capitalize on that market is by using the paradigm of, rather than looking for all the gold during a gold rush, sell all the tools to the people looking for the gold, right? It's one of these famous sayings from the gold rush of the 20s in places like San Francisco and what have you. But the thing is, if you've got a patch of land and you've got 1,000 people there looking for gold, the amount of gold that each person's going to be able to attain is actually going to be a very small amount because of the saturation of the whole thing, right? So people caught on to that and they realized that actually you can make more money selling shovels and pickets and things to the people looking for gold than the ones actually looking for the gold. That has been going on since then now. And what you find is institutions who want to be able to capitalize on a market, they do it by saying, you must get certified with us in order to be able to practice this particular trade. They actually end up erecting a barrier of entry and they actually end up monopolizing it. And it's incredibly unfair because as somebody who wants to get into something, any trade that they want to get into, any business they want to get into, any profession that they want to get into, they always have to get qualified first. They have to spend a year, 2 or 4 years, spend thousands of dollars. And then the worst of it all is that they might find that's not something that they actually wanted to do. Let's say somebody wanted to get into braiding hair, for example, and they spend thousands of dollars, $20,000 learning how to braid somebody's hair. If you spend all this money doing that thing, and then maybe a year later you discover actually it's not something that you actually wanted to do. So you spent all that money and you've lost all that time. You then get this sunk cost fallacy. You get stuck into this position that you don't really want to be in because you feel like you've spent all this money and you've spent all this time going into something. And really what we need to be doing is being in a position where you should be able to try something and learn from somebody who's already an expert and just pick it up that way. But that's not happening because these institutions want to be able to capitalize on the market. Now imagine a child that learns how to ride a bike. Imagine if the child had to sit down, study a textbook, learn everything there is about a bike, the wheel architecture and how chains work and how the brake works and the calipers and the history of bikes and the metal frame and all this kind of stuff. The child would just get bored out of his head, right? And then eventually if you had to give them an exam and they had to pass their exam, and if they didn't get a certain amount of percentage about all the history and all the academic nature of riding the bike, then they wouldn't be certified to ride a bike. It would just be ridiculous. And it would actually put a lot of fear into the child about whether they were actually capable of riding a bike. And that is what these things are doing. Because they've had no actual practice in it. Everything is theory-based, everything's up in the head, and it actually creates these fearful imaginations in our head about whether we can actually do the thing. I mean, imagine what that would do to the child. And to take it even further, imagine if people had to get licensed just to have babies, right? To be able to have children. And, the excuse that's used for a lot of these licensing institutions, it's about risk and it's about health and safety and it's about concern of citizens and everything. But yet, the riskiest thing that you can do, the thing that involves the most amount of risk, is actually giving birth to a child and raising that child because their life is completely dependent on you. Yet there's no certification for that. There's no certification for being a parent. You don't have to do a course or go do an exam in becoming a parent. You just kind of thrust into the whole thing. And you just learn as you go along. You learn from other people and you learn intuitively. That's how human beings actually work. We actually operate intuitively. We learn by observing others. We learn by just practicing and just by doing. And the problem that we've got now is that we actually resist, as a society, we actually resist other people that might have learned something intuitively, that might have learned something by observation, because we want to see their certificate and we want to see their license. And there are plenty of certified people out there that are actually not very good at what they do because the course itself is no good. Because everything is about money. Everything is about just being able to get people into the courses, getting people into exams and making them feel like they're qualified. I remember when I was doing IT support and I was on a job and I wasn't highly Microsoft certified. I was only an MCP, which is a Microsoft certified professional. And I was surrounded by MCSEs, which are Microsoft certified service engineers. And so they were much more highly qualified than I was. And I remember doing a networking job. And these MCSEs that came in, they tried doing the job and they failed at the job. They couldn't actually solve the problem with the firewall and a couple of other things. I came in just from sheer experience. I was able to come in and solve the problem, but I was less qualified than they were. Right? This is the problem with certification. It's not actually about your actual applicability. The actual prowess of somebody cannot be measured through examinations. We've become a society that thinks that the only way we can attain knowledge is by being certified in something or by being qualified in something or in textbooks. And what I'm trying to say really is that knowledge is something, for a lot of cases, is actually something that's very experiential. You do the thing, you experience the thing, and then that teaches you something about it, right? You make a chicken curry and you do it over and over and you just realize what makes the chicken curry so good. It's just practice and it's experience. And the problem that we've got is that we don't value the experience of other people just because they don't have a certificate or they don't have a large social media following or they don't have these amazing credentials by institutions that are only capitalizing on the fact that they can sell credentials to people. And it's dangerous, I think. It's limiting society. It's limiting the progress of society because people are getting qualified in something that's actually not qualifying them very well. It's limiting our access to people that can actually help us with something. If we've got health issues, parenting issues, whatever it is, because we're seeking people with credentials rather than seeking people with experience. And experience you cannot quantify with credentials. Experience is somebody, you speak to them, you just get to know that this person really knows what they're talking about. Or you watch them do what they do and you see, okay, this person can create actual results. And instead of focusing on people with results, we're just focusing on academic prowess. And we're doing that to our children, where if we put them into education, they get their GCSEs, they get their A-levels, they get their university degrees and everything, that's going to make them qualified and really good at what they need to do. And that's going to make them, help them earn good money and become model citizens and all this kind of stuff. It's not true. I know plenty of people who've not done very well in school, but they're running businesses that are 20 million, 30, 40 million in revenue. Because these people are a lot more tuned into their intuition. We need to learn to trust our intuition a lot more. We need to focus on that a lot more. And we need to learn to trust the intuition of other people around us. Because that's what's going to get us access to the knowledge and the wisdom and the experience and the results ultimately that we're looking for. Rather than focusing on credentials, that's what we really need to be doing.